Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Vince Nero here from the BuzzStream podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to invite Gus Pelogia, Senior SEO Product Manager at Indeed. Gus, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Vince. I've been a long-standing fan of BuzzStream. I've used for many years back in my digital PR lead building days, and it's nice to see you guys still thriving so well in the industry. Last year, got to meet, the same team that I used to work with years ago. Everyone's still there, so it's nice to, meet people in person and now to be a guest on your podcast.
Yeah, so I guess I'm probably the newest face that you're seeing.
I think
And
so.
for
Yeah.
those for those that are just tuning in, listening, Gus is wearing one of our BuzzStream hats, the nice new white hat that we gave away at Brighton SEO. So, next time you're at a conference, look for us. Maybe catch some swag. So, the reason I wanted to have Gus on today was I know Gus works now after working in digital marketing agencies. He now works in house as product manager, like I said, at Indeed. And Gus and I were talking a bit at Brighton SEO, and I was kind of talking about how I kind of took a similar path where I worked at an agency for a long time, and now I'm in house with BuzzStream. And I just noticed, things are moved differently, especially in a product focused industry. So I and Gus, talked a little bit about how slowly things can work at a larger company and how you kind of have to be more strategic. And he talked at Brighton about mastering the ticketing system internally and how to write an SEO ticket. So I really think there's some great learnings here for our listeners who are in agency or maybe people who are in house working at really product centric company, maybe a SaaS industry, where getting SEO fixes, changes, implementations really going. I think that people can learn a lot from you, Gus. So let's start. Like my first big question is, when you are working on things at Indeed, can you just kind of talk broadly about your strategies for getting stuff done and hitting goals, because it is such a big, huge company.
Yeah, I'm just chasing people all the time. No, I mean, there's a little bit of that, I try to have only a handful of things that are being done at the same time, and so you actually get from start to end when you're executing something. And I always try to be on the system that people are using, right? So my engineers, they do everything on Jira. So if I want them to do the things that I envision, I have to be on Jira. And if they want tickets to be structured in a certain way, that's the way I'm going to do it. Essentially, if you make it as easy as possible for people to complete whatever piece of work you want them to do for you. So I used to do this even back in my agency years with not exactly the same success that I have now because you are in-house and you see everything very closely. But I used to try to be on the same project management software that my client was using. If they prefer to do things via email, let's do via email. If they want spreadsheets, no, whichever system they want, I just want those things to be done and to prove the impact of our work. So instead of trying to debate and say, oh, I do this way, you do that way, I'm here asking you to execute something for me. I'm going to join the system that is already in motion that most people are using. So you have the least amount of friction.
Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense. You touched on something at the very beginning of your response there about kind of prioritization. I definitely want to hit that, but I'm realizing it might be actually more beneficial too to give just kind of some background for maybe people who are in agencies or maybe work in house but don't work as a large company. Like, can you talk a little bit about just kind of how it works? Like, some people might not know what Jira is, but I think just having that context as to like, sometimes at an agency, you come in with like a laundry list of SEO fixes or something that you need to get done. And people just don't necessarily realize how much stuff is going on in the background, sprints and all that kind of stuff. I didn't know any of that. So I think it would be good to just give a little background there from you.
Yeah, absolutely. I was once like you, like I learned on the go as well. And I had this moment sometimes like, oh, can we just fix this thing here? Just pop a ticket real quick. And they would come back with the requirements on things that I didn't even think were possible. It's like, oh, I just want to make this new page type. Like, well, we use a headless CMS. So you need to create the fields on the CMS. It's one task. UX person designing that page, the second task. That UX, that design will go through accessibility to make sure that it works in most of the screen types and screen readers can read that information properly. And then you get to write the HTML for that page. So only there you already have three different things. Folks in accessibility will find some issues and things will come back and there'll be some back and forth on things that you think are very simple. They're not really that simple. It's like all days people say, oh, you're asking a designer to do something. Oh, just change this color here. Like, they have a magic wand and things will just appear. Okay, colors change is exactly how you envisioned. It's not really like that. And working closely with the engineers on a large company, you realize that things that you thought were simple are actually very complex and they have very a list of layers to get done. But to give a broader view of my work, so let's say I want to build a new feature. We want to do the example I had at Brighton was, let's pretend you're building a new author pages. So you got to go through UX, you got to go through those steps that I mentioned, the HTML, accessibility, and so on. You need to find a reason for those. How are you going to measure the impact of these? Because we can all just have ideas to do things, but why does this need to be done? So I essentially will start there. Like I put a document that we can discuss in detail later, but it's essentially a business case. Why are we doing this? So we want to do an author page because we want to highlight EAT signals, because we want to show our readers who are the people behind these pages. What elements do you want to have in this page? What is mandatory to be on this page and what is not? And so all of the steps, gonna prepare the reasoning behind it. You're gonna discuss how you're gonna measure this. Even before anything gets done, before the first ticket is filed, you need to have all of this ready. And the way that I usually do is I go and talk with someone from content. I'm gonna talk with someone from SEO, someone from engineering. I'm gonna sell this idea. Once I have this document, just a Word document written, I'll go to each one of them and say, does this make sense to you? Do you want to give any suggestions? Are you okay with this happening? Because everyone at some point will do a bit of work on this, right? If you're doing an author page, you're going to need the information about the authors. So who's going to collect all of these pictures and names and social media, and which authors want to have a page and which ones maybe we don't want to have a page for? What's the logic behind all of this? So this will touch work for a lot of different people. And I just come up with an idea, right? I think this will be great, but you will go through all of these hoops. And I usually go to one person, each group, and get that feedback, get their buy-in, make this idea also part of what they're doing. And once we are all aligned and said, okay, this is ready to start, then you're going to start filing those tickets. And we work in sprint with engineers, which means that we have 2-week sprints. So we have a planning day. So let's say every Thursday, every 2 weeks, we're going to sit together, me and the engineers, and they're going to say, these are all the things we have to do in the next 2 weeks. There are things from SEO, there are things from product, there are things from other teams that you've never heard of, but they must be done over this 2-week period. And then you're going to discuss, we're going to choose what is going to be done. So over these 2 weeks, all they will going to work on are the things that we agreed on this day. Eventually something urgent comes in or something can't be done and things are swapped, but essentially everything they're going to do, it's discussed and defined on this day. So if my tickets are not ready, if they're not clear enough, they won't get it done. They won't even make to the sprint. So I think that's this idea that we just want something done real quick. It kind of like dilutes that completely, right? And my ticket needs to be clear enough, must be written the way the engineers understand. All the requirements must be there. Everyone that needs to approve had already approved, and then the work will start. This is all pre-work until something starts turning to reality.
Right. So a lot to unpack there. I think maybe one of the most important things to talk about is kind of that like quantifying the qualitative changes. So something like an author page, right? Like I don't know if there's any research out there that shows that having an author bio or, I know that it's kind of like a best practice in a lot of the SEO stuff that we do. Um, I feel like is kind of just like, this is a best practice. Maybe there are one or two case studies, but for the most part, it's like Google says, this is an important thing. So we should do that. Um, can you talk to us a little bit about like how you go about kind of quantifying some of these SEO changes?
Yeah. So for a lot of initiatives that I do, and again, I don't run more than 3 or 4 at the same time, I try to do what we call an SEO A/B test. So we're going to get a group of pages that had a change and a group of pages that did not have the change. We're going to look at, there's a system behind that will look at that, let's say, traffic for these 2 page groups and find a group that has been moving the same way as the group of pages you want to make the change. So
Okay.
if you look at the graphic, you're going to see 2 lines, one red, one blue, and they move more or less the same way. You're going to notice tiny differences. And once you release something like an author page, then you're going to hopefully see those 2 groups separating. So the group of pages that actually had a change. So the articles that now have an author behind and we have all this author information, we would hope that they are growing more than your control group. That difference, that's where I'm going to say this is the impact of my initiative.
Right. Is there a
That's
tool
enough.
specifically that you use for that A/B testing?
Yeah. So there are plenty of tools out there. If we start with the more expensive ones, Search Pilot,
Mhm.
Split Signal. It's from SEMrush. I assume it's expensive. Prices are not on the website, and so that's usually my benchmark. I haven't
Yeah.
tested, but those are tools that are already built for this. You have SEO
Right.
testing that does some of that crunching as well. We have an internal team that will look at those 2 groups and get way
Okay.
more complicated than I could explain to you
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
But I have the cheapest option. That's what I'm learning how to do it myself is using our studio. And there's a package called Causal Impact. And I'm just literally following a couple of commands and uploading this list of pages to control and the test, and it will crunch the numbers for me.
So do you
So if you
set
want to,
guidelines for those before that? Sorry to interrupt. Do you set
yeah,
guidelines and kind of goals like before, say, the author test that you want to do, like that you're going to A/B test? Is it when you're having those conversations even before the testing runs? Do you set goals then? And like, if so, how do you choose those benchmarks and make that case?
y- yeah, if I'm doing something for the first time, I don't have a benchmark. So I can say traffic will go up by X% because we haven't really done it.
Mm.
But I I think in general, there are things that you expect that it will work, that you at least you have a hypothesis, you have a way to measure it. So let's say internal links. We all know that internal links in SEO, putting more links to a page generally will bring you higher rankings. It's not a guarantee. There are, tons of factors in play, but usually it's something that tends to have a good effect. So that's where I start. Um, I try not to make any changes on on the test on the control group. So let's say if we're adding internal links to a test group, we don't add any to the control group. We don't change the content. We don't build links to this page. You try to keep it as clean as possible. And of course, when you have a large website, you can run lots of tests at the same time without really affecting, separate groups. Different teams can run different tests, and there's so many pages that we can separate all of them if we want.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. Uh, stepping back, I think the thing that I'm still a little blurry on is because I would run into this a lot with agency is like these, how do you internally, or like even if you were an agency, like making the case for these types of changes that are more qualitative, right? Like we know, like you talked about testing after the fact, but like I'm more interested in like, yeah, how do you make the case that this needs to be done, that your dev team should actually spend the time on it?
Yeah, so there's something that I just learned at Indeed, and I don't know who invented, and it's probably like a product practice that I just found it was very interesting, and I just took over for every large initiative I want to run. For everything I write, what we call a PRT, product requirements document. It is a Word document. You're explaining why you want to do this. I don't really do slides anymore. I do if I'm just presenting results or if I want people to watch me, I will do slides. But when I'm doing a document like this, people are not reading. I'm not reading for them while they look at the screen. I'm going to write this document. I'm going to send to people ahead of time and say, let's meet after this. Or maybe we'll put a meeting for a certain time. Everyone goes off camera. We give people time to read this document. They will raise questions. They will ask, say they don't understand this thing or they don't believe in that other information that you have, or they're going to they're going to grill you at this stage. And that's okay. Um, for me, it means that they are paying attention, that they care about this initiative. And if you manage to address a lot of those questions, then you're also going to have them on board. So I'm going to have things like, this is the background. Why are we doing this? These are the teams that need to be involved, like a kind of an overview of tasks. Once you get closer to engineering, one task will turn into 20, but at least we know like, oh, this page, we must have a UX to do this. We must have this team to do that. We must have certain logic for this and whatnot. If we have any designs, we can add there as well, and so on. How you're going to measure the impact as well, or at least how you plan to do it. And I kind of just sell this document when people address all of their concerns or why they think something will work or not going to work. And from there, you can start actually building that feature. And sometimes, to be very honest, the ideas don't go too far away. I write the document and I'm struggling to find the argument myself. And then I realize, this is, if I haven't convinced myself, this is probably shouldn't go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at because I think there are plenty of times, or have been plenty of times where it can be easy to sell an idea to say a client or something who is bought in on the idea of SEO. But like if you're taking on a new client and they're maybe a little unsure on the impact or power of even something like link building or internal linking, I feel like it's really tough sometimes to make some of those calls. So um, do you have any recommendations for kind of the ways that you've gotten buy-in? I mean, I mentioned some of this before, but like, is it like external case studies that you say like, hey, our competitor has done this, or like this research has shown that, this can increase, if we increase the font size, we'll get more people on the page for longer, that kind of stuff. Do you get into that in these PRD documents?
Not to this detail, but I do have, I always have an MVP in there. So a minimal viable product, which is a test version of that thing, right? So I even put some notes here to bring us back to to digital PR, and so we're
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
just
Nice.
talk about digital, just about the engineering and technical SEO. But let's say um, you're gonna run a new campaign. It's a digital PR campaign. You have a new client, and they are signing with you, but they're not really sold yet because they haven't done this before. So you wanna isolate that. You're gonna say this page here that we're gonna build links for doesn't rank for anything, doesn't have traffic yet. So let me show you, or maybe the page already exists. That is the only change we're gonna make. We're gonna build links to this page, and we're gonna show you it's been stable for 6 months. Nothing's going up. We're not going to make content changes. We're not going to test different things, new design, none of that. We're just going to make this change on this thing that you are not so sure about it and try to prove that impact. And if that's moving up, then you start building that confidence with your client. But I wrote down an idea for, let's say, if we're doing a whole PR campaign, just breaking down how I'll do, considering like all the things that I do it indeed now, if that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Love it.
So let's say you're gonna start digital PR campaign. You're gonna research and validate if you have a certain type of data, if it's good enough, if you have an angle, if you have a story. Then you're gonna work to collect all the data the way we need. You're gonna draft the content and visuals, and we're gonna get approval from different teams. By the way, each one of these points is a separate task. That's
Right.
my
Right.
my
Yeah.
point
Yeah.
in here. That something that sometimes you see a final product and it looks very simple, but there are a lot of steps to get to that thing to look that simple. So starting in, you got to research and validate if the idea is good, and if you have a potential angle, then you're going to collect the data. You're going to draft the content, the visuals. We're going to create the design of this page. Maybe it looks like a blog post. Maybe it has to be a completely different page. You're going to place the content on the page, which seems very trivial, but it's also a bit annoying. You go and format and change and whatnot and make sure it looks good. You got a QA. Maybe you have interactive elements. You want to check if it looks good on desktop and mobile. You want to define the best date to start the campaign. You have a list of contacts to outreach. You need to know how good your outreach works to have an idea of how far this campaign will go, how many pieces of coverage you might get. Maybe you want to propose exclusive to some people. You want to write your outreach emails. You want to send the emails. You want to see what worked, what didn't work. You want to keep refining that campaign. So there's at least 10 different tests here that might be done by different people at different stages. And until you send the first email to go for any coverage, that's been weeks or months of work that happened before the meeting moment, let's say.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great way to look at it. And I think that what you said, kind of, there's 10 tasks. I'm sure it's probably even more than that too, because there's like subtasks. And can you give us an idea of like the timelines and how you think of that? Because, like you said, or specifically, let's say for maybe an agency working with a company, like how they should kind of reframe the timelines in their head, because is it just a matter of upfront communication and asking, how long do you need for this kind of thing? Because um, a simple change, like you said, of, hey, let's change the background color of this page or something. To you it seems simple, but you might have to get approval from this guy and this person, this woman. Like that, I feel like is a missing step for a lot of people that work with big companies, for sure.
Yeah. So I guess it really depends off the website or the client you're dealing with, and what is the tech stack, and the people that are behind it. Working at the agency, I would often be an SEO agency, a client, and then there's another agency that is doing the dev work. And you already have two different groups in there with their own interests, with their own fees, and their own things that the client is asking for. So understanding what is the scope that you have in there, or the capacity that the other agency will give you, it's already a very good starting point. And kind of like dealing, do I deal directly with the client? Do I deal directly with the other agency? So I think it varies quite a lot depending on the case. I try to be as close as I can with both of them, and already deviating from your question, but giving credit to all the work they're doing as well, because they need to be. Everyone needs to feel that they are part of what is being built in there, and so I'm trying to formulate a proper answer for you in terms of time. Um,
I mean,
I'm not
it's
sure
tough.
if I had something that clear. Working
Yeah.
internally, I would say that I don't run more than 4 initiatives in a year. Like if I'm talking about the really big things that we are doing.
Can you
If I
give some
happen to
examples
finish,
of what like a really big thing might be, just to give some kind of context, I think.
yeah, let's say I'm doing an internal link feature that is going to connect different products. So there's a one product that indeed has one structure, has one SEO team, and has their own engineers, their own goals, and so on. And I work for a different product that will have different needs. So getting the engineers from one product to write a code on a separate product, they have to follow the structure. The other guys follow the logic they follow, and these guys also have to approve the work before anything gets published. So I think knowing that something like this, of course, you do the first time, you realize, okay, this is more work than we anticipated. Now, if I ever need to do this with two different products, I'm already aware that it's going to be a 3-4 months initiative. So after after being in this role for some time, I don't, I stick with 3-4 things for a whole year. So something like this would take months. Alter pages is something that it would take months as well, considering all the layers and information you need to get.
And how many?
So
I mean, Indeed is humongous. I mean, how many pages are we talking about? Just to give some more context for listeners.
yeah, we are talking, I think, I don't know, a few million pages.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Right.
Yeah, we are going, I don't know, it does vary quite a lot because jobs are available and then they're not open anymore. So that fluctuates a lot, but I don't know, at least 5 million here, 5 to 10 million pages.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. So yeah, I mean, if you're working with like an e-commerce company, like you might, I mean, a million is a lot. So I don't even know if e-commerce hits that, but yeah, it sounds like to me, the larger you get, the longer anything is really going to take, right? Um, but so one thing I thought would be interesting to kind of like get your thoughts on when we talk about like a large company is, um, I know you've said you don't necessarily work with agencies, Deed, but obviously you've worked at an agency. So, be really interesting to hear from you, like if you were onboarding an agency, like what are some of the things that you wish they would ask when they first came on board?
Yeah, I would expect them to ask what are the to ask me what are the challenges that I have now. And I think the agency job is to make the client look good. So whoever is your point of contact in there, you want to give them tons of good news. And it doesn't matter if they will take that credit and they'll pass on as, this is a great work our team has been doing. That person hired you. So in a way, you're an extension of his team. If you fail, it's also his failure or her failure from choosing you as a partner.
Hmm.
And I think just hear your client really well, like understand what they want and like what support you can give. I I once worked with an agency. I worked for project management software, and the agency refused to use the actual software They're like, no, no, we don't get into any of the client management systems. Like, the marketing you are doing is for this product.
Right.
So, there's no better way for you to understand the product that you're selling than using the product.
Yeah.
And you can't do this with every product, right? Maybe, I had a client that was a medical solution. Unless I have that specific disease, I won't go there. Um,
Right.
but there, in a lot of cases you can, right? If you work with an e-commerce that has shops, go to the shop and see their experience, or buy something from them and understand how the site works, and so on. So I think that's what I would expect from them, and really listen to what are the opportunities that you have, because sometimes as an agency you have one view of things and you see a certain opportunity, but internally you have, maybe you're not talking just with another SEO, you're talking with a CMO, you're talking with an owner, and they don't live in the same world as we live. They don't care if Googlebot is seeing this page more often, or if now we have 50 internal links to this page, or if we got this coverage that it didn't bring any direct business, but this is a very strong domain. So if you don't really get into the language that they understand, then they won't really see the value that you're bringing in.
Yeah. I mean, have you seen you've kind of had to adjust some of the way that you talk about things in that same way once you joined
Oh,
Indeed?
absolutely. I think even before I tried to do that way, I had a client on it was a storage space, to rent storage space. And it was a small company, very nice people, but I knew he loved the coverage in the media. So I would try to get some of that happening every month. Or sometimes you notice, like, they have a half an hour a month speaking with you, and in that half an hour you need to show what you did and what you're going to do next. And there are a lot of things that are just, nitty gritty. Oh, yeah, added this new structured data type. He doesn't live in this world. But if I say, I'm finishing this story, I need you to approve this message, or we have almost the research done for this PR piece. I will have it for you next Friday. That would put him at ease and understand, like, oh, things are happening. Things that I care about are happening. On top of course, I'm bringing more people to your business, because that's really the most important thing, right? Are we getting enough business? Are they coming from the channel that we're paying you for? Okay, that's everything else can wait.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, right. Always kind of communicating back to that bottom line kind of seems to be the most effective way to get through to most clients or stakeholders, even if you're internal. All right. So I want to shift a little bit into kind of more of the tactical stuff, because I know that you've done a lot of great work at Indeed, and in your history, your past work. I'm curious, if we can get into a little bit of just kind of like the SEO changes that you've made in Indeed. And I do want to, if we have time, hit a little bit of kind of the current state. We're recording this like a week after AI overviews dropped. We're about a month or two after helpful content. So I want to hit on some of those, but let's start with like just, could you touch on some of the impactful SEO changes that you've made at Indeed?
Yeah. I can't give detail about tons of them. Also, because some of them are so specific to Indeed that they are not really that useful for other people. But definitely some of the internal linking modules that I built, I'm really proud of them, especially because it was a pretty obvious win that I could go back and say, because of this, we got X million extra job seekers applying for jobs in all of these different countries. And that's why I love the A/B test so much, because I've been working on products that are always growing or generally going up. So it's it gets a little hard to pinpoint. Like it's just, well, everyone is doing a great job, but how do we know we are just lucky, or, that's just a market trend that more things are
Yeah.
happening and we're going up, or if it's actually because of this piece of work that you're doing. And that was exactly the conversation that I had with a product leader, 6 months down my role. I had some slides ready to show all the great results we were having. And she watched me for 15 minutes and she says, but how do we know it's because of the things that you're doing? And
That's $1 million SEO
well,
question.
I'm doing all of those things and, we must be doing something good. And that's a moment where I learned about causal impact, and I learned that we had teams that were specializing doing this kind of tests. And then I started filtering what I would do. And once you start nailing the things that really work and how you can measure that impact, then you can do a second version of that or third version of that. So this internal link module that I mentioned, I'm about to do the fourth version. And some of that is just changing the logic on, what links are we going to put in here. Maybe they're connected to the next step the user is going to make, or maybe they're connected to jobs that are more refined based on what that specific user wants, and so on. So part of the product job is to validate those ideas, find the impact, and then iterate. Like I said, I'm doing the fourth version of the same thing. It's just learning that maybe there's another logic that can work a little bit better. And if it doesn't work a little bit better, I'm also measuring. So if it fails, I can go back to the previous one.
Right.
But doing those tests for me, it has been such a game changer on how I do SEO and how excited I am about the things that I'm building. Some of these numbers have been on my promotion case, have been on promotion cases for engineers as well, because you're not just shipping something, but they can put numbers behind it and business numbers behind. So we got this extra amount of revenue or this extra amount of job seekers that applied for jobs because of that. And I guess it just gives a whole different meaning for the work you're doing.
Yeah, so it sounds like there is a lot of kind of strategic thought to this one specifically, the internal linking module, not only from like an SEO standpoint, like, maybe you're pushing people to related topics, but also thinking about like the funnel and pushing people further down the funnel. I feel like sometimes that can be kind of a disconnect for some content creators out there who are even writing content to, informational content on the site. It's like, okay, we've got this great content, it's ranking, but now we got to start thinking about next steps. It's not just the button at the top right of the page to start a trial. It's get them moving throughout the page. What was the thought process there for with Indeed? I mean, was it specifically SEO? Did it start as an SEO kind of play and then moved into like a conversion kind of element, or was it this conversion focus kind of moved them
Yeah,
through the funnel?
no, it did start with traffic in mind. And as the company goals change, you follow that as well. So there was a change of what we wanted to measure, and there was a change again, and now there's another change. So you keep looking at this has already been built. I can just test this to work on a different way, and see if it brings what you're hoping for or not. And you're mentioning about like how, and correct me if I got this wrong, but often people will just think about, I wrote a piece of content, it's bringing traffic, I've done my job. And a while ago, even before Indeed, I was doing, what was it called? One of the softwares that's just record the screen and show where people are clicking,
Hmm.
like a heat map.
Oh yeah, like yeah.
And there was a page that was ranking well, and I wanted to add a couple more internal links, the usual SEO things. Oh, there's a mention to this keyword in here. I'm going to put a link. And as I was analyzing the page, there was a link on the fourth paragraph that was the point that people would click the most. Like it would lose half of the people on the page once they got to this part. And as silly as it looks, um, from the SEO brain who was just often just putting links for SEO reasons, people were actually reading each part of that content and getting
Yeah.
to that point. It's like, oh, I need to understand this thing. There are actually people behind this that are learning about this topic. And if they, it wasn't like a link on the first paragraph. It was like the fourth, fifth down, really down the page after images and videos and whatnot. So looking at that, you can start thinking maybe there's a user journey happening in there. Maybe this page is the one that brings traffic, but people want to learn about this other thing once they get hooked. Maybe there's a third page that is the one they're ready to convert. So it gets more interesting once you have, of course, when you have data, and once you have a lot of data, then there's a lot more to analyze and to play with, and a lot more space to create your own hypotheses and test different things. But I don't know, I just find this universe very fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a very similar story with heat maps on a page. This is when I was with Homebuyer, but we found one specific external link. So people were leaving the page to learn more about this specific thing. So we ended up creating that specific topic. And although it was like a very highly competitive keyword and it didn't bring in organic traffic, it was a topic that people clicked through, within this highly visited page. So to your point, like the journey sometimes it can give you some content ideation ideas and kind of tie into that bottom funnel. So I love that. Um, so Gus, let's talk to, I'm really curious to hear your take on, let's start with like helpful content update. I'm curious if Indeed, um, either it doesn't look like, Indeed was hit by this at all, but has it changed the way that your team internally thinks about content? And then we could talk about AI overviews next because feel like that's like a separate thing. But yeah, let's helpful content is what's your take on that?
Yeah, I don't really spend too much time looking at updates. As generic as this might sound, there's always, it could be a HCO or it could be another update. Sometimes you go down for a couple of weeks in one country and for certain queries, and but for another one you're going up. So I I only had like in my whole career in SEO on websites that I managed, I only had one case where there was a massive drop, and it was the penguin times, and the website just dropped like 10% of traffic overnight. But usually I don't suffer too much on those. I'm reading what's happening, and I'm trying to, if they're saying this type of page is important or this information is important, you should be clear about the A, B, and C. We bake this into initiatives that we're doing. But in general, the answer is no. It wasn't really impacted, not to a level that you need to go and make changes or think your strategy differently or anything like that.
Yeah. Oh, good to hear. And I think that's probably a really important way to think about it too. It's like stay on top of it, understand what's going on, and make sure you're kind of in the loop. But like you said, like you don't necessarily need to take action on everything, especially if things aren't impacted. Um, so the second part of that question was AI overviews, and that was almost like a week ago. They started kind of really rolling those out, and I'll just to set the stage. Like to me, I I haven't seen it, with BuzzStream. I feel like people that are interested in the type of content that we're writing, I'm hoping it's something that they would want to get more in depth in, and like that's the exact kind of content I'm trying to write. But I could see a lot of kind of, I don't know, is AI overviews, do they get into jobs at any point? Is that something that you're seeing, like job offerings in XYZ state? Like, I don't know if that's a thing that they do yet.
Yeah, I think overall for Indeed, it's not really a big problem. At least not as it is right now. Um, like people will still need to get to our website to apply for the jobs. So that conversion step, it's still needed. And it's the same for anything that you buy, right? If you're going for an e-commerce or restaurants or a local business, you might lose some of that traffic when people are in the early stages of research, but the final action will still happen there. Um, Overall, of course, I'm scared of what's going to change. We are used to live SEO in a way, and it is always changing, but a lot of the foundations remain there. So things that I learned 10 years ago, I still use them now, or I've seen them changing bit by bit. Now it's a huge change coming at once. We had maybe a year of teasing, and there are some other players in the market that are challenging a couple of things, but Google's still the biggest one. It's probably going to remain being the biggest one by far for a very long time. And so we need to learn a whole new thing, right? There's always tons of mentions about websites that are not on top 100 that appear there. And so, there's a whole new thing for us to learn. So uh, SEO has always been changing, but now it's a bigger change. And I'm trying to learn as we go, like everybody else. How can I stay on top of this completely new experience? So personally, um, I am a little scared about what's going to happen, and doing my best to stay on top of it, so I'm not left behind. Because I remember when I joined SEO over 10 years ago, I would contact webmasters that at the time were webmasters, and they would say, "Oh, I'm not updating this website anymore. Since this happened, I lost all my traffic and I gave up."
Right, right.
So you would see people in 2010, 2011 saying they just gave up. And
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, this is my whole life now. This is a career. This is what, pays my mortgage and so on." So I can't really let it go and say, "Oh, I don't know what this anymore. I'm going to do something else."
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it sounds like, kind of to your point with the helpful content thing, it's like getting uh, uh, making sure you understand what's going on, but also kind of, adjusting if you have to. Like, obviously, in your case, you don't necessarily need to, but, like, being open to, uh, be flexible as an SEO, as a link builder, as a digital PR. Like, things are gonna change, and we kinda have to move with them, diversify, don't lean too heavily into any one strategy. Like, I feel like those are all kind of the takeaways that I'm hearing from a lot of guests. Um, well, Gus, this has been super helpful and a blast chatting with you, and really eye opening with a lot of things for me. Even having worked in house, I think it's really solidifies some of the things that I need to do, and maybe need to send some emails apologizing to previous clients and dev people over the years. uh, but thanks so much for your time, Gus. Really appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. I probably should send some emails as well. And I guess I thought some things that I never said it, and I'm glad I never said it now. But they work more than we think. Things are
Yeah.
not as simple as we imagine, and I always try to make that connection with if someone comes to fix a pipe in your house. Like,
Yeah.
sure, it's just a pipe. I have no idea how to do this. If you tell me if
Right.
it's this price or that price, how I'm going to question you? I know absolutely zero about this topic. So why do we think that a designer can just do a click and things will change, and um, a developer knows how to code everything the way we want just to move
Right.
this thing to be a little bit on the other part of the page? And the same
Yeah.
that some people think sometimes about SEOs, right? It's just, oh, do your magic. What do you mean do your magic? Like, it's a whole process, a lot of things. It might work in one place, might not work in another one. And I don't know, that's just how life is.
Yeah, yeah. So, from Gus and I, thank you to all our dev teams, our UX designers, our graphic designers over the years. Yeah, I think honestly, I've said this before, but like SEOs would be nothing without the dev team. Like a
Oh,
strong dev
yes,
team is
big
what
time.
drives traffic, or what drives a product and a SEO team really. if you don't have a good one or a fast one, it can really hurt things. So we appreciate you, everyone out there. Gus, thanks so much. Gus Pelogia, Senior SEO Product Manager at Indeed. Gus, tell people where we can find you. I know you are on X, I believe. I know I definitely LinkedIn. Do you have an X profile?
I used to be more active there, not as much anymore, but you can find me on my website as well, guspelogia.com, and all
Awesome.
the places that you mentioned as well.
Yeah. All right, Gus, I'll let you go. You got a lot of work to do, it sounds like. So we want to keep you. Thanks so much to Gus. And if you all like to hear what you see, please give us a subscribe, share it. We're trying to get this information out to the people. And, this great guests like Gus, we want more people to see all the great stuff he has to say. So appreciate you listening and appreciate you, Gus. Thanks for joining.
No, thank you very much for having me. I've been listening to the other episodes and enjoying even a lot of things on link building that I used to do, but I didn't really have that knowledge, that such wealth of knowledge from some people. Like I think it was Will that was comparing US and UK for link
Hmm.
building and things like that. And I'm like, oh, this is, I always wanted to know some of those things, even though I
Yeah.
don't work on this anymore. I still have that fresh memory. So I'm enjoying the podcast as a listener as well.
Yeah. Awesome to hear. Thanks so much. There's more to come.